So here we need to calculate the size of angles A and B. Now you might notice that angle A is part of a right angle because rectangles, the corners are always right angles, always 90 degrees. And if we know that one of the angles is 34, we can work out the other one by subtracting it from 90. So 90 minus 34 is 56, which means angle A must be 56 degrees, because if you add 56 degrees and 34 degrees, you get 90 degrees, and that's a right angle. Now for angle B, you might spot the Z angles here. I know it's a backward Z, but it still works. If this one's 34, you've got parallel lines, and because it's a rectangle, you know that you do. So angle B must be 34 degrees. Now, if you didn't spot the Z angle, you could still work it out if you remember that angles in a triangle add up to 180. So we've got a right angle, so we've got 90, we've got 56, so we've got 146 altogether. So to get to 180, we need 34 more, and that tells us the size of the missing angle in the triangle. Now here we need to calculate the size of angle Y. So we've got angles on a straight line here, and we're given 65 degrees and a right angle which is 90 degrees. So altogether we have 155 degrees, and we just need to work out how many more degrees we need so that our straight line adds up to 180. So we do 180 minus 155, and that gives us 25 degrees. Now here we've got angles on a whole turn, and we need to remember angles on a whole turn always add up to 360. So they've given us a right angle, so 90 degrees, and two 50-degree angles. So altogether they've given us 190 is the total of the three angles that they've given us. Angles on a whole turn add up to 360, so we can subtract that from 360 to get our missing angle, which is 170 degrees. So notice we've gone through three questions. The first one, we needed to spot that a right angle is 90 degrees. The second one, we needed to remember a straight line is 180. And the third question, we needed to remember that a whole turn, the angles that make up part of the turn, have to add up to 360 for a whole turn. Now here's a slightly different kind of question. Layla completes 1.5 somersaults in a dive. How many degrees does Layla turn through in her dive? So if we remember that a whole turn is 360, she's done 1.5 turns, so a half turn is half of 360, and because she's done a whole turn and then another half turn, we can add those together. So Layla has turned through 540 degrees in her dive. This diagram shows a rectangle. Calculate angles X and Y. Now let's start with angle Y. The first thing I spot is that we can use Z angles here. So if this angle is 36 degrees, the angle on the opposite side will also be 36 degrees. And here we have a corner of a rectangle, so we need to make sure that angle Y plus 36 equals 90. So if we take 36 away from 90, that gives us angle Y, it gives us 54 degrees. Now finding angle X is a bit more difficult, but if we remember, if this is 36 degrees, then this angle here will be 36 degrees as well, because they're joining the opposite points of a rectangle. And so 36 plus 36, we've got 72 degrees in our triangle. If we remember that triangles, the degrees must add up, the angles must add up to 180, then we can do 180 minus 72 to give us angle X, which is 108 degrees. This diagram shows two overlapping squares on a straight line. Calculate the value of angle X and the value of angle Y. So let's start with angle X. And let's remember we've got overlapping squares, and so we know the corners of squares are 90 degrees, so we can put those in our calculation. Now for angle X, we've got a quadrilateral here, and we need to remember that angles in a quadrilateral, so in a shape with four sides, always add up to 360. So we know that squares and rectangles have 90 degree angles to give 360, but whatever quadrilateral you have, the angles always add up to 360. So they've given us 125 plus two 90 degree angles. They've given us 305 degrees. We know that the total has to be 360. So if we take 305, the total of the angles they've given us, away from 360, that gives us angle X, which is 55 degrees. Now finding angle Y is a bit more difficult, but we can remember when lines intersect, the opposite angles are always the same. So we know this angle here is also 125. And we know that we've got a corner of a square here, so we've got 90 degrees here. And because we've got 60 and 90, and we can see that we're on a straight line here, we've got 150 in total. Angles on a straight line add up to 180, so this angle here must be 30. So now notice, if Y is part of this triangle, then we've got two of our angles in the triangle, and we know angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So if we take 125 and 30, so if we take 155 away from 180, that gives us 25 degrees. So angle Y must be 25 degrees.